Hello world. This hopefully very short video will address the mono and stereo mix differences and anomalies of the Beatles songs that appeared in 1968 but that were not included on the White Album. This includes 2 singles and the hitherto unreleased songs from the Yellow Submarine LP. This is the said offensive article here. Can I just butt in here to say how much I absolutely hate this album? I don't like the fact that for the soundtrack, what they did was go back to 1967 and pick out a couple of songs from the bin, as it were, you know, that they deemed unreleasable at the time, and then decided to shove on to the Yellow Submarine soundtrack as supposedly new songs. When the only Paul contribution happens to be the most, twee and, just downright rubbish altogether now, then you know that it's not that brilliant. Well, in preparation for doing this video, and that would have been last year when I'd just finished doing the Magical Mystery Tour, Mixed Differences and Anomalies, and then I started doing this and I thought, I really can't face it. And I got a message a couple of months ago from Quinn, who's a viewer of mine from Canada, I believe, and he said, well, when are you doing the next Beatles Anomalies video? And I said, well, I just hate Yellow Submarine, so here I am just telling you I hate Yellow Submarine. These are going to get a very, very quick gloss over in this video, and the only anomalies that I'm going to do are Lady Madonna, Hey Jude and Revolution. So Yellow Sub, the LP, was pushed back to an early '69 release so as not to hamper the sales of the White Album, although by the time of the LP's release, the film had already been out several months. When the Beatles originally agreed to the cartoon film concept, their enthusiasm to do a film was at a low. Hence, some songs, as I say, that's why they date back to 1967. No attempt was ever made to make a true stereo-only a Northern song in the group's time together, for instance. And whilst on the subject of mono and stereo mixes, the Yellow Submarine mono LP was simply a fold down of the stereo version. So no separate mono stereo mixes were made of the new songs on here. Although All You Need Is Love and Yellow Submarine, as used in the mono fold down Yellow Submarine, which was, I think, only released in the UK, certainly wasn't released in America. I'm not sure about other territories, but this was the last time that we had a separate mono and stereo album. But as I say, the mono was just a copy of the stereo, so no separate mixes at all. All right, so when you get All You Need Is Love and Yellow Submarine as their stereo versions folded down into mono, then I suppose you can say that they're slightly different versions, if you want to say that. Right, they sound a little bit different in mono to what they sound in stereo, but they're not the same mono mixes as we'd had before. Right, so only a Northern song. There are no differences between the mono and stereo version. The mono was first made on the 21st of April 1967. They made a mock stereo version of it in 1968, 29th of October 1968. Just seems to be the day when they got these songs together. And it was made by running 2 mono versions side by side and doing a little bit of EQE, jiggery pokery and stuff. And then that mock stereo was then folded down to make the mono yellow version that's on the mono Yellow Submarine thing. So there's no differences, basically. With All Together now, there was no mono mix made, except for the film soundtrack, the original film soundtrack, not the one that we have now that is commonly available now, because they used all stereo versions for those. So It's All Too Much, again made in 1967, but a stereo mix was made in October 1968, folded down into mono. The film, again, used a different part of It's All Too Much that was not included on the record as such, different verses and stuff. There's been some bootlegs of them. And I've got in bold here, in the stereo mix, most of the sound that is not placed centre is placed using ADT to both left and right. So it sounds very dense. The Inner Light was the B-side of Lady Madonna. The mono version has a slightly better version of the introduction. It seems like an instrument that was overdubbed onto the mono version was left off of the stereo version, because the mono version was made in 1968 for a single. It was never felt necessary to make a stereo version, except that somebody did in 1970, in January 1970, when the Beatles had all but split up. Goodness knows why they did it, and then that was left unheard of until 1981. It appeared on some sort of EP, but the first time that most of us would have heard that stereo mix would have been on Past Masters Volume 2 in 1988. So, it was a long time for that stereo mix to sit still. And as I say, the introduction to the mono and stereo are slightly different. Lady Madonna. So it's the first time I'm actually going to do some Anomalies. Okay, again, the mono was made in 1968. The stereo wasn't made until the 2nd of December 1969. And again, by that time, the Beatles had all but split up. By the time this stereo mix had been made, it was the 2nd of December 1969. So I suppose somebody thought, well, we might use The Inner Light, which was the B-side, at some point. So they made a stereo mix a few weeks later. Right. The only difference in mono and stereo is that the last piano note is a bit longer than the stereo version. And it kind of feels like there is an empty space when the stereo version ends. So at 2 seconds, during the piano intro, which is on the left-hand side, there is an ooh. There is some breath from Paul during the bass picking up in the right-hand side. And all the way through there, from 0 to 9 seconds, there are some clicky noises throughout that are on the right-hand side. And it sounds like the right-hand side shouldn't have been turned up at that point. And when many, many years later, a compilation album called The Beatles #1 was made, that whole section from 0 till 9 seconds has been completely deleted from the right-hand side. So you can only hear the piano intro on the left. Right? At 1:01 in the right-hand channel, it sounds like someone's going on. And the same at 1:36, another on. And then at 1:40, Tuesday Afternoon Is Never Ending, click. Okay, some people have said, is that Paul going ending? But he's clearly not. And again, listening to the version on 1, which I actually did, because somebody mentioned it on the What Goes On Anomalies website, then I duly listened and heard that it is definitely a click sound. But it's weird. It comes up somewhere in the centre and it seems to be totally divorced of any kind of percussion or anything like that. So it is just a click, okay? And it's not Paul going ending. It's a click, all right? And that's Lady Madonna for you. Now I've got Hey Bulldog, which was one of the Yellow Submarine tracks. Probably the best of the unreleased Yellow Submarine tracks. But when they first made that film and people saw that in 1968, the best bit of it, i.e. the bit that had Hey Bulldog in it, had been cut out. Because, as I say, I don't think that Yellow Submarine as a film really stands the test of time. It seems to have probably 2 or 3 more endings than it should have. Alright, and I think that's just to get in a few more songs. They cut Hey Bulldog out, which was probably, if you wanted to cut one of the songs out of the ending to tighten it up a little bit, you wouldn't have cut Hey Bulldog out, but they did. Right? It's certainly back where it should be on modern issues of the film, but people back in the day, in 68, didn't get a Hey Bulldog. So the first time that they would have known that Hey Bulldog existed was when it appeared here. Alright, and again, there's nothing different between the stereo and mono things, and it was actually one that was recorded in 1968, i.e. the year that the film came out. Right, next song is that I want to talk about is Revolution 2. Alright, Revolution 1 is the slow, swingy version on the White Album. Alright, Revolution 9 is the one at the very end of the White Album that I'm informed a lot of people skip, which you shouldn't. You should never skip it. It's the most essential song on that whole album. And Revolution 2, as it were, is the version that John made after Revolution 1, funnily enough. The first was Revolution 1. He didn't know whether he was for violent protest or for non-violent protest. So in Revolution 1, he sings, "Don't you know you can count me out in?" Because he's not made his mind up. All right. In Revolution 2, although this is the much more upbeat and heavy version, he definitely wants out of violent revolution, right? Even though this sounds like the most sort of aggressive, the most aggressive version, right? There aren't really any major differences between the mono and stereo, except that the mono sounds more upbeat, aggressive, distorted, heavy. Now, there's a metronome kind of click-tracky track that runs all the way through this. You can hear it at various different points. Certainly at about 6 seconds in, you can hear that click track in the left hand side, and you can hear it also as the song is about to sort of join its coda right at the very end. At about 3 minutes, you can hear it again. At 2 seconds, the right hand side brightens. There's a burst of hiss as a track that was hitherto not switched on, as it were, gets switched on. Also, John's guitar tone brightens up as well. Now, at 2 seconds, you do have to be listening. At 17 to 18 seconds, "We All Want to Change the World." It's the first time that John sings "We All Want to Change the World," and there's a double tracking error. On the left, it sounds like "World." It's like an edit, as it were. Part of the word "world" has been cut out, and it's also a bit distorted. It's like "We all want to change the world," like that. 23 seconds, "Evolution," because again, double tracking error. This time, somebody sang "institution" instead of "evolution." They tried to cut out the first part of institution, but managed to leave a little bit of the "t" in. So it sounds like "evolution." We all want to change the world. At 40 seconds, there is a very, very delicious slide down in the guitar on the right hand side. Most of the dodgy bits, shall we say, of Revolution 2 appear on the left hand side. All right. So if I'm going over to the right hand side for this one, it's because that's a really brilliant bit there. It's really, really quiet and low down, but it's like whew, and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and brings the whole pace up further from where it was. At 58 seconds, on the left hand side, again, John Lennon says "ah," and there's some wobbly bass notes, a bit like maybe there's been an edit going on there, but yeah, John doing a silly John voice going "ah" on the left hand side. At 1 minute 22 seconds, there is a skip in the snare drum, and all I can say to you is just count it. You know, tap your fingers along with the beat. When you get to 122, you'll hear it go in the snare drum on the left hand side. Very, very obvious on headphones. Again, another double tracking error on All Right at 1 minute 44 seconds. At 1:49 seconds, it sounds like someone spitting out chewing gum in the centre. Like that. At 2 minutes 10 seconds, at the end of that brilliant piano solo where there's all these glissandos going, starting low and going up, 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 on the left hand side you will hear an edit. 2 minutes 10 seconds, and things don't really settle down from that edit until about 2 minutes 15 seconds, and you'll hear it's like an audible sigh of relief as the music just gets back into its groove. So there's so it's obviously quite a prominent edit there. At 2 minutes 20 seconds, we all want to change your head, double tracking error. And at 2:57 seconds, another double tracking error on the word all right. At 3:10, going on 3:11, during the coda, the all right, there is another drum skip or edit. So again, be counting those beats, because at 3 minutes 10 seconds, you're going to hear another skip in the drums. Okay, and at 3:15, really, really quietly, just as the last riff is playing out, you can hear John saying, "Thank you, that's it." Or it sounds like John saying, "Thank you, that's it." Hey Jude. This one has probably the most famous Beatles anomaly of 1968. But yeah, this has got probably one of the most famous Beatles anomalies in it. Okay, it starts out at 6 seconds. There is a stray tambourine. Then at 12 seconds, and make it better, remember to let her into your heart. So there's this breathy sound after better and just before remember. At 52 seconds, there is some very muffled talking in the left-hand side. I think it might be Ringo trying to get into it, because this is where the first drum fill is coming in for the song to sort of get going proper, you know, after Paul's piano solo at the beginning. All right, the band comes in and it sounds like Ringo's trying to feel it by sort of saying something muffled. Sounds like, you know, maybe he's sort of saying something to do with the words. And then when Paul says, "and any time you feel the pain," there is an in that same sort of splurge of talking that you can hear on the left hand side. It really is very muffled. Listen to it on headphones. 1 minute 27 seconds to 1 minute 32 seconds. This is in the turnaround bit after the "anytime you feel the pain, hey Jude" refrain bit, okay? And it goes da 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 da, and then the piano goes plonk, 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 plonk. All right. On the left-hand side, at 127, through to 132, the cymbals, there's like a sort of reverberant halo effect around them, and the reverb also picks up a little bit of that piano as well. So yeah, it's It's quite a nice effect when you hear it, but sort of coming out of your speakers, as it were. I'm looking at my speakers; they're over there, right? But when you're listening on headphones, it sounds a bit odd in your left ear. Okay, as I say, most of the anomalies that we've got here are all going on the left hand side as well. All right, and be listening to that left hand channel, because the famous anomaly is coming later on, and it's on the left. So yeah, 1:37 seconds. Hey Jude, Don't Let Me Down, and on the left hand side there's another vocal sort of sound, a bit like the lady Madonna. At 2:14, the only anomaly I think that's on the right, there's a screechy noise on the right before, and don't you know that it's just you? And Paul, there seems to be like a leftover just you that is Paul doing it in a more raspy rock and roll way. Mainly the backing vocals are on the left and in the centre, but here Paul on the right hand side is doing a just you, and it sounds like it's a remnant from another take or something like that. At 2:50, during the words "make it better," on the left hand side you get two power chords from John which go chung chung, but clearly there was meant to be a third one, so that it goes chung chung chung, but John flubs it, and it basically, the third chord is just rubbish, and they do quite a very good job of deleting it. It kind of goes dead. So you got Make It Better, chung chung from John, and a dead point there. And then at 2:56, John is clearly a bit peeved about that, because he's got the wrong chord. And at 2:59, fucking hell! And then at 3 minutes, the left hand side brightens up for the na 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 chorus. Okay, so so obviously the fucking hell is the anomaly, basically the most famous 1968 anomaly. However, the reason why is because he played a wrong chord, which you can hear him say it, and the wrong chord is that duff sort of chung chung kind of flubby chord at the end, which they actually managed to delete. Why they didn't delete John's backing commentary there, I really don't know, and I don't think anybody else can probably explain it either, but it's left there for all to hear. Right, as I say, at 3 minutes the whole left hand channel brightens up for the na 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 chorus. All right, and if you want to hear what's being said during the na 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 na, you have to follow along with the What Goes On anomalies, because again there's debate and conversation going on about exactly what's they're actually singing, but it's all just improvisation. It's all a bit of fun. The only reason why it goes on quite a long time is because when they were making the video and whatever, they just enjoyed doing it. So there, that's it really. There's not really any other explanation for it other than that. Now, as a quick addendum to this video, 2 later released Beatles songs were conceived in 1967/1968. Across the Universe, first recorded in 1968, was mixed twice, once by George Martin in 1969 for a charity LP, and again by Phil Spector, overmixed for the Let It Be album. And I'll deal with that when I deal with mixed differences and anomalies in 1970, but you might be waiting a long time for that, because you know how I feel about Let It Be. Any of you who've looked at my Beatles LP rankings and stuff will know how I feel about that album. Likewise, You Know My Name, Look Up the Number, which was first conceived in 1967, was the B-side of Let It Be, and it will be discussed in my 1970 video when I make it. More pertinent to 1968, George Harrison's Not Guilty received its first recording in that year. John and Paul vetoed its inclusion on the White Album. George Martin remixed it in 1984 for a project that then became the Anthology, and it's on Anthology 3. And George Harrison later recorded a remake in 1979 for his solo LP, just called George Harrison. Finally, John led the band through a number called What's the New Mary Jane in 1968, presumably for the White Album. It never got an official release, either solo or with the Beatles, but a 1984 remix by George Martin also appeared on Anthology 3. And hopefully that's been a very quick video. Let's see how long we are. 31 minutes. However, I'm sure that we can pare that down with a judicious bit of use of editing ourselves. All right, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share if you dare. Consider giving a thanks, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.